Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's episode, we're going to talk all about the World Series, how it impacts players' cards. We're talking about the MLB awards are going to be announced throughout the month of November. We actually have the finalists that were just released today. So we want to talk about who made it to the top three, who did make it to the top three. And we're also going to be talking about BGS 9.5s versus PSA 10s and a whole bunch of stuff there. So let's introduce who is here this week. We have Mr. Phil Filmington. He, I believe, has a small cold, but his voice just sounds more manly than normal. We have Ty. Teapot was not here last week. It's good to have you back, Tyler. And then we have Chris, baseball card addict. Are you actually addicted to baseball cards?
According to everyone in my family, yes.
I would agree with that. All right, great. So let's just jump right into this. The very first thing is the World Series matchup was unique. I want to set a picture of what happened this year, right? We started with the World Baseball Classic. That feels like a lifetime ago. That's when baseball really felt like it was getting more popular. Like people really into it. We had all these different countries. USA was loaded. The Ohtani versus Trout at bat in the championship. All these great things. The new rules came in. People were kind of concerned about them. The pitch clock was here. Then we had all the other stuff. The pickoff attempts helped stolen bases go up. Baseball was in a fantastic place. It was up double digits in attendance and compared to previous years. One of the biggest jumps ever in attendance year over year. And then we get to the World Series, and we just had the least watched World Series ever. Straight up, the least watched World Series between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Texas Rangers. So it's interesting to discuss the baseball consequences, if that's going to harm all of the momentum we had. And we're going to discuss also the price movements of specific players within the World Series and their baseball cards. So I guess the first thing is, do you believe the World Series matchup between the Diamondbacks and the Rangers hurt baseball cards? Phil, let's hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, I think most of us here, or all of us, believe that the team success element, like who goes to the World Series, who wins the World Series, that doesn't really help cards. It's more about individual player performances. But I think, Scott, you laid it up really well. We had a lot of momentum going in. Attendance and viewership this year was up about 10%, helped largely because of the rule changes, probably first and foremost, shortening game times by about 40 minutes, which is definitely significant. And also just improving base-to-base baseball, versus just like 2 or 3 outcomes and really getting back into stolen bases and things like that. Now, unfortunately, the viewership was way down. It was actually below 2020, which featured the Rays. Yes, a very large market team in the Dodgers, but that was also, if you recall, shortened season, artificial sound in the stadiums. This felt even less like playoff baseball. So it wasn't just the teams for me. Just it didn't feel like a good product was out on the field. Now chalk it up to, smaller markets, the fans not getting rowdy, chalk it up to just not enough star players, great coaching, huge hits other than Adolis Garcia and Corey Seager. So it is quite unfortunate that we, the momentum, whether you want to say it was killed or from an optics perspective, maybe the way baseball's perceived outside the sport, are they laughing at us again? And is this sort of stench going to last all throughout the offseason? Now, we tend to have short memories with regards to, again, like playoff outcomes. But it would have been nice for me. I like the World Series and playoffs as a platform to elevate some players that don't usually get that national attention. But if nobody's watching, are they really getting elevated? Even if the players aren't quite as interesting as the ones we're used to, it's Corbin Carroll, guy I like a lot. It's Corey Seager, a guy that's sort of fallen in and out of favor within the last 4 or 5 years because of injuries and inconsistency. At least it was a couple players, Adolis Garcia, that definitely did get recognized. Corbin Carroll didn't really show up for the entire World Series tournament, though. But yeah, I mean, looking back at the games, the elimination game didn't feel like an elimination game. Mm-hmm. Only one of the 5 games was decided by 1 run, and that was game 1. And to me, that was the most interesting one by far. And then I think the other games are separated by like 5 runs, 4 runs, 2 runs, and like 8 runs. Yeah, I wish we got to see a better product.
Agreed. Ty, what are your thoughts?
I would pretty much agree with everything Phil said, actually, which is rare. I mean, you're looking for the players. If you're just thinking about like spotlights on the game and on the sport itself, You want those big ticket names. I think the leagues want those big ticket names. You had all that momentum with the Phillies, taking out the Braves again, who were the favorites, and then, looking seemingly unstoppable, and then just very quickly falling apart and collapsing to the Diamondbacks. And at that point, it's like, from the hobby perspective, it's Corbin Carroll or bust, more or less. Like he's the big name. Obviously, there are some other names that, all saw price spikes. Phil mentioned most of them. But he's really the one with like that star power factor that could be sustainable for seasons to come. And like Phil said, he hit a home run. He was 1 of 5 in game 1. And then he pretty much just disappeared. Like he didn't do anything the rest of the series. You never heard his name. And the problem with those, like the way the games played out, it's like game 2 was 9-1. Game 3 was a snooze fest, 1-3. And then by the time you get to the elimination game, it's like clear this series is over. And that Simeon home run late in the game, just almost like, I like Simeon, and I was, happy to see him win. I think, just that gridiron type, or that Iron Man attitude, playing all those games throughout the season, every game for the Rangers. But like, that almost felt like a sting. Like it just was like, this is the end, and you already knew it was over before the even, last 3 outs were necessary.
The Alec Thomas air was what really took the mind. It just really sucked. That part really sucked. It's like, oh, now there's no point even watching the bottom of the 9th at this point.
It just like all fizzled out, right? So I don't know. I felt like there was a lot of energy early in the playoffs. Sorry, actually not really, because you had those first rounds were just like eliminations, and then all of a sudden there was this drama, and then it just dissipated by the time you got to the World Series. So the Seager thing is what's really interesting to me. Just knowing that he's won 2 World Series MVPs on 2 different teams. Only he and Reggie Jackson have done that. And that's really fascinating. I know we talk a lot about how individual performance and really regular season performance is what matters the most when it comes to card prices. And a lot of times just how people remember players. But that's an interesting thing that's unique. And I do wonder, long term, he's still got a lot of work to do to solidify his career. Obviously, he's, in the running for MVP, had a heck of a season. And I remember when the Rangers signed him thinking, the Rangers kind of looked just dead in the water. They hadn't done anything in a while. I thought, man, maybe they just overpaid a shortstop when they should be looking at other positions. Well, obviously that paid off for them. So I'm really interested to see how his card prices play out over the next few years, and if he'll get any more of like people looking at a long-term view at him or not. I guess that remains to be seen.
People claim they collect certain players. They only collect certain players when times are good. If he has another injury-prone season, which he's had, we will see if people start collecting Corey Seager. And the truth is, I remember after 2020, he had a great postseason. 2021, he did not have a good postseason. And Dodgers fans were all over, get rid of him. They were saying, get rid of the guy. And now he had a great postseason with the Rangers, and now Dodgers fans are saying we want him back. And it's just the way baseball fans are. And it's very difficult not to take these things too high or low in the moment. But Seager did win 2 World Series MVPs. That is going to be part of his legacy forever. Rangers fans will always love him forever, even if he does not make the Hall of Fame. He's not really on pace right now, and that's okay. Not every player has to make the Hall of Fame. Not saying it's a 0% chance, but he's not quite there. I also want to point out, it's hard to have good runs an entire postseason. It's so difficult. We look at Bryce Harper. He was great this year until he wasn't, right? Like he was great, and then he was bad the last 2 games, and then people were calling him out online. And that same thing happened to him last year in the World Series. He hit 200 in the World Series last year when they lost, and everybody's calling him out online. And it's just baseball. And that's one thing that we have to remind ourselves, it's just not get too high, not get too low. But I think we do need to celebrate the individuals like Corey Seager, who had a great postseason throughout. He had the whole run. That's when it gets remembered in a special way. And that's why I think it could have good value.
It's interesting. There's been a lot of drama around shortstops over the last year plus between big contracts. And if you look at it, obviously the Seager deal at this point has paid off for the Rangers in a big time way. Last year, Jeremy Pena was the hero, for the Astros. Everybody's like, Carlos Correa, who? And worth noting, just from a card perspective, Pena's cards, unsurprisingly, came crashing down right about in December. So they held a little longer than you would anticipate, and then they came down in December. But then you think about, Francisco Lindor, Trevor Story, Trey Turner didn't work out going to the Phillies this year. He sucked. I mean, I know he kind of turned it on after the fans got behind him, but it's just interesting. That position, maybe more than any other position, seems to be like the one that keeps coming through with these big contracts. They're trying to pay somebody, solidify that, and then the guys just like don't pay off. So I'll be curious to see if any of those other guys can turn it around next year too.
Yeah, it's a very great point. And Chris, it's been 12 minutes and you haven't talked. So you deserve like 5-minute monologue right here. So make it worthwhile. What were your thoughts on the World Series?
All right, cool. I'll give you guys a trivia question to think about while I ramble incoherently for my 5 minutes. But Corey Seager also has an NLCS MVP, which gives him 3 postseason MVP awards, which is something only I think I looked this up fairly diligently. I think only one other player has 3. So if you guys want to think about that.
Mickey Mantle.
No.
Yogi Berra.
No. Okay, so one of the things I like about World Series matchups is, like, as someone who loves SSPs, is we get some of these variations you never see come out of the woodwork for sale of star players. Like last year, a bunch of Harper stuff came up for sale that you literally never see. And if he has a card you didn't see last year, then you're just never going to see it. But this year, the only player that really has stuff like that is Seager. And so a couple really cool Corey Seager variations did pop up, like his 2017 Gold Cup super short print. It's like a horizontal kind of low angle shot. 2 of those came up, and the last one went for auction and broke $300, which is a new high for that card by a pretty wide margin, I think. And I know I Phil had mentioned to me before, but that the Bryce Harper, even not making the World Series, like one of his best rookie cards, that Topps Chrome SSP Refractor, I think that sold for like $9K on, was it Golden? I think it was Golden.
It was someone like that.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if they made the World Series, like how much more that might have gone for. But yeah, this World Series just, I don't know how to say it, but it was just it was a bummer. It really was. Like the 4 of us love baseball, and I think we watch as much baseball as anyone, and we recorded one of these episodes during a World Series game. And
it's like we missed anything at all.
There's no way that I would have done that if the Braves or Phillies, probably even the Astros, were playing. I probably would have sat it out.
So I do want to say one thing to all the Rangers and Diamondbacks fans listening. First of all, congratulations, Rangers fans. You are now out of baseball purgatory of only having, there's now 4 teams, not 5, that have never won a World Series. I'm one of them, but I do also want to point out that Diamondbacks fans, I feel like you don't want me to compare myself and the Rockies to you, but I'm going to. You're an NL West team. You're below the Giants, the Padres, the Dodgers this year. It's so cool you made it to the World Series. That's kind of what you hope for as a smaller market team. But I understand now. If the Rockies make the World Series, no one really cares outside of Rockies fans and Colorado. And it is unfortunate. We were so close to having a Phillies-Astros matchup. But can you imagine that matchup? What that would have been like? We saw it last year, 2 years ago, and it was great. It would be great to see a rematch. I think people would have tuned in. So I do want to talk about players in particular really quick. I want to do like 20-second answers on each of these players so we can go really quick to the next segment so we don't get too long on the World Series. But we had some players who did well, like Adolis Garcia this World Series. So my question, any thoughts on Adolis Garcia's cards and this postseason? I have my own I can share, but I want to hear your thoughts first. Let's hear your thoughts, Chris, if you have anything first.
I have no Adolis Garcia cards. I purchased no Adolis Garcia cards. I like him. It's really stunk that he got hurt. But I saw a lot of Bowman Chrome autos come up for sale, which you normally don't see. And I know he's got Stadium Club rookie auto. That's a pretty cool card too. But I didn't buy any. I don't know.
Okay, Phil, what were your thoughts?
I think the time to buy or the time to sell Adolis was probably a week ago. But it's funny. There's a guy in an Instagram group that I'm a part of, and he actually pulled the 2018 Bowman Chrome first Superfractor auto when he got back to the hobby in 2020. And he was asking like, what he should do with it. He doesn't usually sell cards. And we're all just like, well, I let other people kind of tell him because I don't feel like I should have the right to tell somebody to sell and when to sell, especially if it backfires, right? So I let the other people tell him like, you might
Where's
not
this moral compass coming from, Phil? Out of nowhere.
I don't know. It's less about the morals and more about the responsibility after the fact.
There you go.
I tell him to sell, and hey, he had a home run game 1. He might have had one game, 5, 6, 7, or well, we didn't go beyond 5, I guess, but if he had stayed healthy. But yeah, that guy, I know he had 39 home runs this year, but he's a lock to be long-term irrelevant. Like,
Yes.
is all the things we said about Randy Arozarena stand true with him?
I
And
think
he's
Randy
probably got even
Arozarena's-
more flaws in his game.
Yeah, Randy Rosen's a way better spot. At least he's younger. I think Adolis is late 20s, early 30s, isn't he?
He's 30.
Yeah, like it's one of those things. There was never a better time to sell Adolis Garcia ever, and there will never be a better time than 2 weeks ago, in my opinion. And if you bought during that time, I hope you're a really big player collector, because you need to have another one of those magical World Series runs to get back to that point, in my opinion. Great ball player, though. He really is a great ball player. Sucks the Cardinals keep cutting all their good players for some reason and letting other teams have them, with Arozarena, with Adolis Garcia, with all the pitchers. Is it Sandy Alcantara? He was a Cardinal. Like, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. But, you can never predict prospects very well.
Yeah, I get his body composition has changed quite a bit. That's what Cardinals fans will say about
He
him.
was skinny, wasn't he?
Yeah, so like actually, if you just Google like Adolis Garcia steroids, it's like a citizen's arrest is coming. There's like all this speculation on like Reddit. If you look at his body and his
my
frame,
problem with that is, remember when B. Gordon got hit with steroids? It's not.
yeah,
He
true.
hit his prime because he was 25 with the Cardinals, and now that man is 30 years old. So he is in that, but he might be doing steroids. Who knows? They all might be, for all I know. All right, so next player. Let's talk about Evan Longoria. Did this ruin Evan Longoria's chances of the Hall of Fame? He is a very borderline Hall of Famer. Very borderline Hall of Famer. I can get into that. About 58 WAR, 120 OPS plus. Never been top 3 MVP, I don't believe, maybe once. And so he missed out on a lot of Gold Gloves because of certain players in certain leagues. If he would have won a World Series, I think it would have helped his case. He didn't. Does that persuade you at all, or do you feel indifferent? Chris, what are your thoughts?
It doesn't really affect. I would not put him in the Hall of Fame. I will always remember Evan Longoria. I think has like the single greatest regular season home run in baseball history, but he does not belong. He really shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, unfortunately.
So do you think if he would have won the World Series, though, and maybe we'll ask Ty, if he would have won the World Series, helped his resume, maybe had a big World Series like Seager had, would that have helped his Hall of Fame chances, or do we think it is irrelevant?
If he would have won the World Series MVP and would have just been, I don't know, batted 600 or something, because he's not going to hit a bunch of home runs. Maybe, but I don't think he's got a chance. Really, I think he's unfortunately one of those many players in the Hall of very good, and I don't know that it would have made much of a difference. And I really like him. I follow him on Instagram, and I think he's kind of into cards and stuff. He just seems like a good family guy. So
he just stopped listening to our podcast because of you two jerks.
Yeah, I really like him.
Here.
I like rooting for him. Come on our podcast sometime, Evan. Yeah, I think he's just that close.
I do too. Phil, you have any thoughts?
No, I agree with you guys. And yeah, Ken Golden did say that he was his favorite player of the D-backs because he is a card guy. So I learned that about him. Defense is still solid, but for me, I mean, if he walked into a World Series championship, he would have been an insignificant piece. I mean, we can't just assume he would have done something great because he's not one of the top players on that team that's already not very good.
Right.
Speaking of walking into a World Series and was not a significant piece was Max Scherzer. All-time great, Hall of Famer. Didn't really have a ton of he pitched a few innings and he got hurt and then was out. But does this help his legacy? Having 2 World Series now, one at the Nationals in 2019 where he was an integral part, one of the most important pieces, and then this year. Does this help his legacy?
Probably, because when his voting comes up, he'll be like Max Scherzer, whatever. I don't know how many Cy Youngs he has, but it'll always say like 3 Cy Youngs, 2 World Series championships. Like there isn't going to be like fine print, like only through 3 innings or anything like that. So I'm going to say that yes, there's a good guy. It's a bump.
All right, we'll leave it there. We're going to move forward. I do want to point out Corbin Carroll, Evan Carter, Alec Thomas, rookies. I think this helps. I think we all can agree, even though Alec Thomas, it's unfortunate what happened to him at the very end. But that game, it wasn't like it was his fault at all, in my opinion. So we'll leave it at that. I think it helps all their values. Even though they don't have a great World Series, they're all young. They have a bright future. So next thing, I'm actually going to pull up a Twitter post from Mr. Jeff Passan, and we're going to look at some awards real quick. And for those Spotify listeners, we had a few of you this past episode. So for those few listening, I will describe it to you as well, but I'm going to show it to all of the people on YouTube. But the awards were not announced in the sense like we know who won. Well, a lot of the awards we do kind of know who won, but we actually have the top three. So we have the finalists for each of the awards, and we're going to talk about the players that weren't in the top three and the players that made it to the top three, if there's any surprises, and what our thoughts are. So let me just pull that up really quick. All right, so here's the tweet. The awards finalists for AL MVP were Ohtani, Seager, and Simeon. NL MVP was Acuna, Betts, and Freeman. AL Cy Young was Cole, Gossman, and Gray. NL Cy Young was Snell, Zach Gallen, Logan Webb. Rookie of the Year, we have Gunnar Henderson, Tanner Bibee, whatever it is, and Tristan Casas. NL Roy, Corbin Carroll, Senga, Outman, and then NL Manager, not that super important to me. But there are some things that are very interesting about these awards. The very first one, right, we have Ohtani, Seager, Simeon. Simeon has now finished top three MVP 3 different times now, right? Yeah. So that's a pretty good peak. Like that's a decent peak for a player. He's having a late resurgence in his career. And then we also have Freeman beating out Olsen. So we'll talk about that, as well as Steele for the Cubs didn't make the top 3, which kind of surprised me for NL Cy Young. And we can go even further on Rookie of the Year. But what are our thoughts on the AL MVP? Obviously, Ohtani's going to win. He had a 10-WAR season, even if he didn't play the last month. The Angels were bad. Baseball voting, that's just how baseball voting is. It is what it is. And I would have voted for Ohtani myself. I would have had Seager second, and Simeon ends up third. I think it's exactly how it's going to end up. But what do you think about Seager and Simeon being second and third, respectively? Let's start with Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of funny how there's two guys on the World Series champions that finished second and third in the MVP. I was really surprised. I know Kyle Tucker didn't have a huge WAR, but he was almost 30-30, and his team, won the division. I really thought he would sneak into this top 3, but
if everybody's 30-30, is anybody 30-30?
No, I guess that's true. But the MVP voters care about Kyle Tucker about as much as baseball card collectors do.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I don't think this moves the needle career-wise for Seager and Simeon. I mean, like you said, they're both having these kind of like resurgences around 30. I think Seager's 29 and Simeon is 33. But I mean, yeah, Simeon's career numbers are just nowhere near where they would have to be for him to get some Hall of Fame thought. Seager, like we said, if he can continue this pace and just stay on the field and play 145 games every year, that would be great. But I'm just curious if Ohtani is going to be unanimous. I assume he will be, but
I think he will be too. I think you're right on the money, Chris. And in regards to Corey Seager, talking about Hall of Fame, he is now 29 years old. He had by far the best year of his career. His next best year was his his second year. He played 27 games in 2015, but in 2016, he had his other best year outside of the COVID season, and by far the best. So if he can continue this, this is who he is now, all of a sudden, he could definitely make a Hall of Fame case in his 30s, like Beltre did, and a couple other players where they were good in their 20s and then amazing in their 30s, and that could be Corey Seager. With Simeon,
I was going to say I have a quick card question.
Yeah.
So Seager and Simeon, 2 middle infielders, right around 30 years old, not on direct Hall of Fame paths, but have put up some really good numbers lately. If you were to choose to buy a Bowman Chrome auto of, say, Ellie De La Cruz or one of these two guys, where would you rather put your money?
Long run or short run? Because that makes a big difference in that answer. Like, do I have to hold it or can I sell it whenever?
Whatever you want to do.
I'm taking Ellie, man. Get that hype with baseball cards.
And how soon are you selling it?
As soon as it goes up.
All right, I'm going to disqualify that answer.
Okay, I'll let someone else answer. Sorry, Phil.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I have to buy Corey Seager this week, I don't want to do that.
No,
I'd rather buy Ellie this week.
Between now and
yeah, okay,
right, we'll put a time frame on it. If you were to buy,
Corey Seager, I think the key for him right around 32-ish WAR. Scott,
age 29,
5 5 years at 5 WAR each on average. That puts him on like a Freddie Freeman-esque trajectory, maybe, or close to, a little bit behind. I don't know. I think that puts him in the conversation. The key is health. And I think so last year, we talked about projections in one of our more recent episodes. Corey Seager had like a 250 average last year, and he was expected to have the most positive regression basically out of anyone And that was probably before the rule changes, right? The guy that hits the ball on the ground to his pull side, right, and banning the shift. They expected him to get one of the best, deltas this year from an average perspective. So I think last year he showed the power, but not the average, which is a little bit weird because usually it's the opposite with him, where the average is always that kind of floor right around 290, 300 when he's healthy. But this could be very close to who he is, and I hope he stays healthy. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but not just Seager and Simeon being on the Rangers, the World Series team, but also last year getting ridiculed for spending, I think it was $500 million between those two players in free agency. Oh, what are they doing? They're stupid. Well, they made another mistake with DeGrom, but looks like Seager and Simeon are paying off.
DeGrom got his ring too, didn't he? He actually had like 1.7 WAR this year in like the 3 games he pitched because he was amazing for that 30 seconds. But I will say with Seager, I don't want to be like the negative Nancy, and I'm not going to say he's never going to be this player again. But like we look at his career, like right in regards to WAR, his rookie year and his sophomore year were by far his best. He was never over 4 WAR until this year he got to 6.9. He did turn it around defensively because he had by far outside of his sophomore year. But you expect a young player to have their better defensive seasons because they're young, they can move, all that stuff. He did great defensively and offensively. So this could be who he is. I will say, though, I'm still a little bit hesitant to spend big dollars on Corey Seager. But at the same time, he does have a career 134 OPS plus as a shortstop, which we can go look all-time shortstops, right? I can pull up not StatCast. I can pull up different things to do this. We'll just
do the Derek Jeter bashing.
Yep.
I will not bash Derek Jeter, but that is 134 OPS right here is going to be in the top 20 all time. Obviously, what I was going to do was go to StatHead to get a sample size that made sense, which I don't have. But overall, he's had a good offensive career. And if you can figure out defensively and stay on the field, who knows, man? There's a chance. There's a real chance. Okay, so that's interesting. Seager and Simeon, the Rangers got shredded for them both. They won a World Series, and they might win another one or two. Who knows? NL MVP. This is one that we have someone on here, maybe 2 people, that do not agree with this, in my opinion. NL MVPs Acuna, Betts, and Freeman, not Acuna, Betts, and Matt Olson. So, Chris, let's hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, I feel like it's 2 years in a row now. I find myself emotionally having to choose between Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson for various things. I'm just going to focus on the positives, and let's just talk about how good Freddie Freeman is and how consistent he is. This will be his 8th top 10 MVP finish, 5 in the top 5. He should cross 60 WAR next year. He's got 2,100 plus hits. His OPS plus is 142. He's got a real good shot to finish with like 400 homers, 1,500 RBIs, 1,500 runs. And he's like this close from that like magic triple slash of the 300, 400, 500. For
very hard to do.
Slugging. Like it's not impossible. He is a couple more seasons at this rate, and he can surpass that. I think he's very slowly, sort of in a backwards way, becoming like one of the best hitters that we have seen. In like his consistency is really, really hard to match. It reminds me, I don't want to say this, but like his level of consistency is similar to what we saw with like Albert Pujols. Obviously, Pujols' numbers were better, but they were the same, like for a decade. And I feel like Freeman is doing that too, just to a lesser extent.
Freeman is interesting because his 20s were good. They weren't like amazing, but his mid-30s have been amazing. He's gotten extremely better with age, in my opinion, and he's showing that, and he's more consistent. And I don't know. So I agree with you. I think if he can do another year or two just like this, I think he will go into retirement when he retires in 7-8 years, on how long it is, with a really good tone compared to Pujols, of course, because Pujols had a lot of bad stuff going into retirement. But I know you didn't want to talk about this, but I want to talk about this. So Baseball Reference has Freddie Freeman losing in WAR 6.6 to 7.4. Fangraphs WAR has Freddie Freeman at 7.9 WAR and Matt Olson at like 6.7. So to pick your poison between which WAR, it basically is just looking at defense and maybe a few other base running metrics. But there's a pretty good argument that Matt Olson should have been in the top 3. So Phil or Ty, do you have a thought on this at all? I'll go with Ty first.
Sure. I think both of them were deserving. They easily, either one. It could be just swapped either way. both of the guys had exceptional years. Freeman consistent, hitting well above league average. Like you said when we were chatting earlier, leading the league in doubles yet again. He's just an extra base hit machine. Very tough out. Olsen just had exceptional power season. Not a bad defender, and I don't know. The more I'm thinking about it, I probably would have gone Freeman, but both of those guys easily could have made it.
Okay, Phil, do you have any different thoughts?
Yeah, I guess the one thing is I stand by the Freddie Freeman choice, and I think if you look at, and it was just up on the screen, you don't need to go back to it, but OPS plus, a measure of position adjusted, ballpark adjusted offense from Baseball Reference's perspective, it's off by a point, 161 versus 162. Looking at just offense only, Fangraphs has an equivalent measure that's called WRC plus. And again, I think they were off by like one each. And I think Freeman gets the edge because of the defensive prowess, his ability to play a better first base. And in addition to that, stole over 20 bases, and he did so with efficiency. So the base running runs, another component of WAR. I think if you were to add up all of these WARs and have like an average Fangraphs and Baseball Reference WAR, I think Freeman would have an edge by at least 0.3, 0.4 because of that, because he's just a more well-rounded player. So having said that, I don't want to take away anything from Matt Olson. 283 average, that's huge for him. I'm assuming a career high, as well as that on base percentage and a home run number. So Braves are going to be pretty good with that guy, and given his age, they should. Well, Freeman's age like fine wine, so no promises there. But Olson's a stud.
Matt Olson, when he's on, he is insane, and I've never seen an argument for his cards until this year. He's only 29 as well. And if this is who he's turning into from we're seeing this year, and maybe even last year, where he still was a really good ball player, only a 120 OPS plus, he was much better in 2021 when he was in his last year with Oakland. Really, if this is who he's going to be the next 3 years, right? I know 50 home runs is hard to do. I'm not saying it is. That's 150 home runs on top of his 230. That puts him at 380. He's only 33. You start talking about the 400 number, and maybe even if you're feeling crazy, the 500 number. And if we're talking about baseball card values, there's not much more than baseball card collectors like than home runs. So I guess question in regards to pure percentage increase, if you had to invest in Freeman or Matt Olson for the next 12 to 24 months, who are you taking? Because Matt Olson's cards are still cheap compared to, baseball players. Freddie Freeman at the different time, though, is an established Hall of Famer. Does that influence if you're doing a flip between the two? Not saying to our viewers that you should invest in either of these, but who would you put your money into? $1,000, maybe $2,000. Who are you putting it into?
If it's next 2 years, I'd say Olsen for sure, personally.
Okay, I think he's working. Like Braves fans are starting to like him. That helps with his legacy. Dodgers fans are starting to like Freeman. Maybe not after this postseason. They actually don't like Freeman, but overall, it is what it is. What's your thoughts, Chris, as a fan of literally both players? Probably the perfect guy to ask this question to.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I should get myself a really nice Matt Olson card because I only bought one when the Braves traded for him. I attempted to buy another that became a whole eBay debacle that I won't get into, but I just never went back, to get more, and I kind of regretted it all season. I have a fairly significant stack of Freddie Freeman, so I really shouldn't be putting more money into Freddie Freeman. So if I were to buy one of those two, I would probably buy a Matt Olson, but I'm not a normal person.
2 votes for Olson. Phil?
Yeah, for me, it's tough because this might be the anomaly season for Matt Olson, right?
Yes.
And I mean, if you look at even 52-week, try not to buy stocks closer to their 52-week highs, right? I mean, you're kind of doing that with either of these players right now with Freeman and Olson, I feel like. So I'll take Tristan Casas, who actually is going to finish probably third in American League Rookie of the Year, just for the upside and because he's not a guy that's top of mind for a lot of players. But if I had to choose, I'd probably still take Freeman.
That Tristan Casas comment, trying to sound like me, Phil. That's something I would have said. But
yeah,
okay.
if I was answering for someone else, I would absolutely say I would feel more comfortable putting money into Freeman than Olson.
Freeman is safer. Absolutely.
He's safer. Yeah.
Freeman is safer. He has rookies in 2 of the best looking stats of the last 15 to 20 years. In 2011 Finest and 2011 Topps Chrome. Those are 2 Absolutely beautiful sets with great designs, bold color refractors, really nice on-card rookie autos. I mean, and Olsen's Bowman Chrome history is a little bit muddled.
It's very muddled.
Yeah, it's
Freeman has a much lower floor, but I think lower upside over the next 2 years. Like he's just
higher
safer.
floor. Yeah, higher floor.
Sorry, higher floor, lower ceiling. Yes, thank you. I have a trivia question for you guys related to this. So Matt Olson has the second most home runs in Major League Baseball since 2019. Who has the most?
Judge.
I mean, yeah.
Good guess. He's third.
Oh,
Okay,
Ohtani?
don't tell me.
Just think home run hitters since 2019.
So that's
Pete Alonso.
2021.
Pete
Oh,
Alonso.
yeah, Pete Alonso.
Oh.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Pete
That's an
Alonso.
interesting market we should talk about is Pete Alonso. Phil, good for you, man. You win this episode.
I have one other thought-provoking question is Joey Votto just announced the Reds just announced that Joey Votto won't be coming back. His services are no longer required. And I for a long time, just fantasy baseball and overall like league, I was always thinking Votto and Paul Goldschmidt, kind of looking at first baseman drafting in your leagues and stuff. Now if you throw Freddie Freeman into that mix and you put him into stat head, very similar stats all around. Right now, Votto's got the edge on a lot of things. He's the green between the three of them. But Freeman being much younger, Votto being at the tail end of his career, if not the end, where do you guys think those guys will rank like 1, 2, and 3 kind of when it's all said and done? Goldschmidt obviously came off the MVP last year and then had a little bit of a down year this year. I think that's kind of an interesting question because they all look like they're on Hall of Fame trajectories.
I think you actually look at their OPS plus, they're all basically the same. Like they're all very WRC plus for their careers.
Yeah.
The thing that we have is Goldschmidt, he had an MVP year last year. But I think if I had to put it into pure values, I would go Freeman 1. People like Freddie Freeman. He's a Braves legend. He brought a World Series to the Braves, won an MVP with the Braves. I think no matter what happens, he's won, even if I personally think, Goldschmidt's career, I like it better, whatever you want to say. And I think Freeman has a chance at 3,000 hits. Number 2 is interesting because I would probably say, I'd probably say Goldschmidt. I think pure value, I'd say Goldschmidt and then Votto, just because Goldschmidt actually has Bowman Chrome autographs. Votto doesn't. And his rookie cards are weird because his true rookie's 2002, but he has other rookies in 2008. While Paul Goldschmidt, he only has 1 autograph there's 2. One's a prospect, but he has 0 rookie autographs while his Bowman Chrome autograph is the key card. So I would go Goldschmidt than Votto.
Okay. Votto's really interesting.
He's a fan favorite.
He is. And we're at a point in baseball now where we recognize how important on base percentage is, but we didn't before. We talk about how great Tony Gwynn was because he's won all those batting titles. Votto has 8 on base percentage titles.
Yeah.
So we could debate if that's more important than a batting average title. I don't know. But if you look at his counting stats, they don't jump off the page for Joey Votto. But we have seen his peaks were incredible. But yeah, I'm gonna agree with you, and I'm gonna say Freeman is number 1 because I think his personality will go a long way. He is almost certainly going to retire, possibly back in Atlanta after his Dodger contract. He's gonna go right into a broadcast booth, for either the Dodgers, the Braves, or ESPN. And he'll just be around. He'll be around baseball forever. And he's going to have some really flashy round numbers. And, people like him. So I'm going to say Freeman 1. I'm going to go Votto 2 and Goldschmidt 3. I just don't.
You can switch those 2 easy. You can make an argument really easy.
Buzz around Goldschmidt. Even when he won, the MVP. I don't know. I never got, heat. I felt like. That might not be the right word. But I beat shows and stuff. No one was really asking about Goldschmidt. No one really. I don't know. I'm sure St. Louis fans are all over.
But are people asking about Joey Votto?
Not anymore. No.
Yeah.
During that last MVP run, yes.
Yeah. All right, Phil, you're the tiebreaker.
Yeah. Freeman, then. Ooh, it's close. I guess I'll go Goldschmidt, then Votto, and I'm a big Votto guy. Votto came really close to winning a second MVP. You should look at the total tally with votes against. It was Giancarlo Stanton's breakout year. It was
one
super
of the closest ever in Major League Baseball history by 2 votes.
Yeah, Freeman's interesting. So if you look at Freeman's resume versus Goldschmidt, and it's if you looked at him a year ago, Freeman was overshadowing Goldschmidt's career with inferior stats. And I think part of this has to do with where they peaked. So Goldschmidt peaked before the card boom. Freeman's peaking after the card boom, and I think that's helping, right? There's more collectors
good
now.
point.
There's more eyeballs. There's more data tracking tools. There's more comps, high-end comps, and
Goldschmidt also peaked in Arizona, and Freeman peaked in Atlanta.
Right. And actually, like Goldschmidt used to steal 20, 30 bases, right? Now Freeman's stealing 20 to 30 bases.
One of 2 first basemen ever to have 250 home runs and 150 stolen bases ever. Him and Jeff Bagwell. So
yeah. So he was actually a lot more consistent earlier on. And if you were to count their silver sluggers, I bet Goldschmidt still has the edge. And I bet a lot of people would be surprised to learn that.
He has the most silver sluggers ever for a first baseman.
Exactly. So he had him beat. He probably had him beat in All-Star game appearances too. People forget that period before Freeman got really good. And one of the reasons why he was my buy target this year is because, as we said, he's aging really well. And if you looked at his year last year, where it was a down year, it was still top 3 in his career in max and average exit velocity and barrel rate, I believe. So it's like, wait a second. So he's not going to be a 20 home run guy going forward. He's actually probably going to get back up to that 30 level. Like, yeah. And with all those doubles that we saw this year. So I'll take Freeman 1 for sure, though.
I agree. And people are going to say, what about Albert Pujols? He technically has more silver sluggers than Paul Goldschmidt. That's true. But Goldschmidt has more at first base. Pujols had some at third base. So if you're wondering why, that's why. Okay. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap this up. Any final thoughts, questions? Actually, let's look at this list one more time and have just a round robin. See if there's anything that matters to anybody. Phil mentioned Tristan Casas. We should talk about that for Phil really quick. So I'm going to share this really fast. I'm going to point out that Garrett Cole winning a Cy Young is excellent for his Hall of Fame resume. He's on pace to get 3,000 strikeouts. He does not have a lot of the good advanced metrics like WAR or anything like that, but he's going to have the strikeouts. The Cy Young now helps. It's going to be interesting in the next 3 years for Garrett Cole. Anybody else have any thoughts? Phil?
Yeah, just National League Rookie of the Year. I think it kind of paints a good picture that Corbin Carroll and Kodai Senga had good rookie seasons. Outside of that, nobody really did. So the voters this year, and I'm sure they always do, they favor volumes. So innings pitched from a pitcher perspective, plate appearances from hitter perspective. That's probably why Nolan Jones in his 2020 season and 400 plate appearances didn't crack the top 3. Bobby Miller also got called up probably in late May. And James Outman probably just racking up those plate appearances, even though he had a 990 OPS in April and did nothing after that. I guess he showed them enough to take down that prize.
Ty.
Or top 3, at least.
My preseason NL MVP pick was Machado. He didn't show up, so
he has tennis elbow.
yeah. No surprises here, really, for me. It was a shame to me that Shane McClanahan got hurt. He was pitching phenomenally as expected. He was my Cy Young preseason pick. And how crazy to see Sandy Alcantara also absolutely just sucked this year. So just kind of some surprises in that regard. That could have been a whole separate conversation of who did we think would be on here preseason and who made it. But this list doesn't surprise me. I dropped Kodai Senga in my fantasy league early in the season and regretted that. But
we've all made dumb choices. We get you. And last but not least, Chris.
I'm looking at the NL Cy Young is one of the races I think isn't an automatic. It's interesting to see who the voters are going to go with, because Snell was obviously the hardest to hit, and his rate stats are great except the walks. But Gallen threw 30 more innings, and I think Webb threw 35 more innings. So it'll be interesting to see if the voters really look into quantity as well as quality. I'm not sure. I don't know if has anyone who's led the league in walks ever won the Cy Young before.
Oh, that's a great question.
Usually they lead the league in ERA, and not in the good way. But
right.
I think Vegas loves Snell.
Vegas loves Snell.
Yeah, and some of that has to do with Gallen just blowing it. Logan Webb wasn't even top 4 till the final week or two. It would have been Strider who was blowing it, and it would have been Steele, who didn't really have the strikeout numbers.
Yeah,
who also had a final bad 2 starts, I think.
Yeah, he collapsed at the end. But Wheeler also had really good, advanced numbers too. His WAR is great, and he did not make the top 3. But yeah, when you look at these two, obviously his ERA is Snell's ERA is way, way better. I'm just curious if it's going to be close because Gallen did, 30 more innings. I mean, that's a lot of innings.
3 more wins. That would have mattered a few years back. But all right. Well, everybody, thanks for watching. Let us in the comments below what your take is on these awards, and we will catch you later this week.
Scotty, before you stop recording, we have to answer my trivia question.
Trivia.
Our viewers are just going to be left hung out to dry.
What was the trivia question?
Who besides Corey Seager has won 3 postseason MVP awards?
David Ortiz.
No, it's a pitcher. And I think he has 3 World Series titles, but he has 2 ALCS MVPs and 1 World Series MVP.
Who?
And he's not in the Hall of Fame. It is
Roger Clemens.
Dave Stewart.
Dave Stewart.
Dave Stewart.
There you
All
go.
right. That was a great trivia.
All right, everybody. Catch you later.